There we go. Can you see and hear me okay?
I can. I can hear you. I can see you.
Wonderful.
Right
Right,
on.
let me click on
Yeah.
that. Okay, that is right over your nose at the moment. There we go. I can see your handsome face. How are you doing, sir?
Nice. Yeah, I'm good. I'm good, man. Thank you so much for taking the time here to join us.
No
What a
worries.
story, man. I don't even know where to begin. You've just got such a cool resume,
Oh,
so body language expert, former spy, fiction, nonfiction author, detection expert. Um, where the hell did you go to school? And you had a guidance counselor clearly that was better than the one that I had.
I actually spent most time skiving school. I hated school in all honesty. It was one of those things that it was, I don't know. I couldn't get with the mainstream education. I was great at learning, but not the way that they wanted me to do it.
Sure,
Uh,
I think a lot of people are like that too, right? You kind of
yeah,
freeze up, like I don't learn like that. I can't just learn stuff and spit it out. Like that's not
exactly.
how I
And
yeah.
I've learned learning styles since, and I've learned how to, I became a qualified teacher, and a lot of what they taught me, I looked at and think there's got to be a better way of doing this, and there is. There's many better ways of doing it since getting into like kind of learning techniques and teaching techniques. I mean, my daughter, by the age of 5, she could count in 9 different languages. So, it was something that, there is a video of her when she was about 9, 10 years old, and she's sitting there talking about subatomic particles, and she can name pretty much most of the elements on the periodic table. She knew the order of the planets of the solar system. I mean, there was just like, there's the stuff I taught, and that was all through homeschooling. I've tried it in normal schools several times, and she just doesn't get on with the way that they teach.
Yeah, no, well, fair enough. And so how did you like my kids today? I'm gonna talk to a former spy, and they're like, no way, like spy for what? And I'm like, I don't know, I'm gonna find out. Like, so talk to us about that side of your world. Like, how did you get into that?
Okay, so that was something that I mean, I didn't go in the usual way that most people get into the industry. So usually at college they get a tap on the shoulder, and they get the kind of how would you like to do something for your country kind of conversation. And me, I did it a different way. I got in the back end through the private sector, and I got good at one particular thing, and I was told, oh, you're pretty good at that. How would you like to do this? And this was like in private investigations or that kind of thing. And every time I moved up, my circles grew, my capabilities grew, and I started off with real low level stuff and managed to work my way up to just rubbing shoulders with the right people. I got government contracts and government contracts for surveillance, and the more people I knew in those government departments, the more I could say, hey. Can I give this a shot? Or they'd recognize something in me and say, "You're not too bad at that. Do you want to give this a go?" And just built up until eventually rubbed shoulders with the right people and said, "Hey, can I get on the books as a permanent employee?" And they were like, "Yeah, okay, we'll give you a go." And that
That's
was
crazy. And so like what were some are you allowed to tell me, or would you have to kill me if you told me some of your like
um,
some of the cases, I guess, they like what did they put you on? What did you have to do, like just
well,
as a general.
one of my first, and I've said this publicly before, so there's no problem with this. But one of my very first intelligence assignments was quite simple, and I have told people I was Hollywood educated, so I was kind of expecting to be sat in a room and given a slideshow and an exploding watch and an Aston Martin and all the other bits and pieces, and I didn't get any of that. I had one sentence, and they looked at me and they said, "Find out how the Russians are getting railgun information out of Korea." I was like, okay. No Aston Martin, no slideshow, no gadgets, no nothing. And instead, what I got was, what are you still doing here? Oh,
Wow.
okay. And that was all I had. That was everything I had. So yeah. And luckily, I managed to do it within a few days, proved myself, went back and completed the task. And they were like, okay, you've impressed us. There's more work.
Okay, and then that's where they like give you the cool cars and the toys and all that. Like, is it
Unfortunately,
true
no.
like 007 and like those spy movies and like, are they remotely
No.
close to what it's truly like in real life?
No, so there's two sides to this. There's a yes and a no. There is a place up in Milton Keynes that does actually make kind of gadgets that we might need or helps disguise certain objects as other objects or that kind of thing. They might be able to hide something within your phone that allows you to do more than what the phone would normally do, but it's hidden within an app that just looks like an everyday calendar or something along those lines.
Mm.
So that they do that to a degree, but the majority of the time they actually go the other route, which is what they call BIC or bought in country. And so what they will do, because if you can imagine, if I get to the airport of a foreign country and I've got a watch that explodes and a pair of X-ray specs and all the other gadgets that are super cool, I'm not getting through the airport. It's not going to happen. And I'll have a lot of questions to ask, and I probably will either be arrested or persona non grata in a very short time. So what they do, instead of giving you those things, they teach you how to make them yourself.
Oh,
So you will have lots of lessons in if you mix this, and this in these quantities, you will have an explosive. If you mix this, and this, you will have a knockout gas, or you will have a smoke bomb, or you will. So we learn how to go to shopping stores or DIY shops or whatever and get whatever we need, and what's publicly available for us, and to anybody else really, but how to use it in a very different way.
interesting. Is there something that you could pass along to literally everybody that listens or watches this podcast? And like, is there something that we can do in the spy world to make our lives
Yeah, I
better?
mean, depending on what you want, of course. I mean, so I actually I write about a lot of this tradecraft in my fiction. In fact, my fiction novel, the very first one, The Unforgiven Spy, is crammed with tons and tons of tradecraft. So I can give you some examples of what I use in that, and that way, you could, if anybody wants to know a hell of a lot more, they can go and buy the book and have a read through it.
Yeah.
But so. A simple one like a field expedient incendiary device, for example. What I will do with something like that is I will have a very fine grade wire wool, like a very very fine wire wool that has perhaps two crocodile clips going to it. The one will go directly to a 9-volt battery. The second one will go to a timer switch or something along those lines. That will all go in a paper bag. That will all go with some lint or fluff or whatever I can get around that. Maybe some rolled up newspaper into then a bigger bag and into an area that I know when that catches fire will then you know turn the rest of everything around it into a nice big glowing warm orange glow. And of course to do a countdown device, it's really really simple. You could just get something as simple as an egg timer. You just have two little nails or something in it that when the two contact, it touches the two wires together, and then that 9-volt battery then goes to the wire wool. The wire wool will then burst into flames. The bag and the fluff, that if you get it out of a tumble dryer, that's generally the best stuff to use. The fluff will act as a tinder, and the bag and the bits around it will then burst into flames and job done. So things like that. And there are lots of other different ways of doing it. Trip wires where you can have two bolts going through a wooden peg with a wire on each side and a piece of cardboard. And then you could just use shark line or heavy duty fishing line. And the fishing line goes to the piece of cardboard. When the door is opened or whatever, the wire's tripped, it pulls that piece of cardboard. The two contacts touch each other and the wires then complete the circuit. And so there's lots of different ways of doing stuff like that. And there's tons and tons of stuff like that in my book. Lock picking and all the fun stuff of making the spy gadgets.
Jesus, you seem like one of those guys that'd be a mental case when you're on vacation and you're like putting tape on the door and like you know like
Yeah,
the things you like gotta check
yeah, there
this
are
like
things I
the
do.
peephole and everything like
So I actually, my wife goes crazy because we go traveling a lot and whatever else, and one of my common practices, I take a little rubber door wedge with me, and that way, whichever hotel room we're in, I kind of kick it in under the doors, or just an extra layer of security. It's just one of those things that I've done out of habit for years. Working in the trade, it's been something that that could end up buying you an extra valuable few seconds in order to either arm yourself, get out, do whatever you need to do. So there's lots of things like that I'll do. I'll roll up a towel, I'll put it behind the door in the hotel room, because I personally have used a method to get into hotel rooms where sometimes sometimes you can pull the panel off and you can pick the lock. And other times there isn't a manual override and it's an electronic key fob and whatever else, and they're not easy to get into from the outside, but the inside you just pull the handle down. So what I did on this one particular occasion, the hotel had got this trunking, electronic trunking from one light to another, and I just peeled the kind of I don't know whether you want to call it a lid or whatever that went on the top, peeled that off. I got some duct tape and some paracord and run it around the end, and I pushed the two through the door. I pulled the paracord that bent the trunking like paneling up, and then just slid it sideways and then pulled the two down, which pulled the handle down and allowed me to get into the hotel room. So it's little things like that, little tricks of the trade and little tips like that, that, I mean, again, my book's absolutely loaded with them.
Yeah.
What it does, it allows me to know that that can be done. And to counter it, just roll up a towel and stick it behind the door handle in your hotel room.
Mm. And what's the deal with the two-way mirror where like you can tell if they're seeing you? How do you tell that?
Yeah, so best thing to do there is just put your fingernail against it, or even a pen. Just touch a pen against it. And the saying in the trade is, if there's no gap, it's a trap.
Oh,
So because mirror has the mirror material is on the back of the glass. So depending on the thickness of the glass, there should be a gap of the thickness of the glass between you and the mirror material. If there's no gap, then it's a two-way mirror, because it's not the materials on this side rather than the rear of the mirror.
oh,
So yeah,
oh, so it's
so
pretty straightforward then. You get to like literally just put your finger right there.
yeah, that's all you have to do. You can shine a torch on it as well, or flashlight on it to kind of see if there's anything that you can obviously see the other side. But
Yeah.
the majority of the time, it's just as simple as touching it or using a pen or anything you've got that you can visually. If you can visually see that gap, then. And again, be very, very careful with like very thin glass mirrors, or something that is they've got a lot of these flexible, shiny metal mirrors now that aren't actually real glass mirrors. So, take that into account. But the majority of the time, that should
Yeah,
be
don't be blasting at the front desk like, what the hell? They're like, no, it's just thin glass, but it's okay.
yeah.
So,
So, but yeah,
you're married, right?
I am. Yeah, yeah.
Have you got kids?
Hmm.
Or yeah, off the top, you'd mentioned that, yeah. And
Yeah.
they must think that like, what do they think is the coolest thing that you've done?
Give them pocket money, I think, is generally the coolest thing. Allow them to go and do what they want. It's one of those. I actually saw it was like I think it was Slayer the other day. He's standing there and he's got his family with him, and
Right.
he's doing this pose, and of course the whole world is there, and the caption, because his whole family's there and his teenage daughter's looking at him like.
Yeah.
And and it says you could literally be the lead singer of Slayer, and your teenage daughter will still think you're lame. So so to
It's so
her,
true, right? It's so
my
true.
daughter, she's kind of, yeah, she's heard it all before, and I'm just typical dad. And my wife's had the same over the years. We've done a lot of training and that kind of thing, that she's been there helping out and that kind of thing. And people say, "Oh, it must be so cool living with somebody that can do all of this," and she's like. "Ugh."
Yeah.
So it's disappointing to to kind of the family. They just see me as the average family guy dad. And
Yeah.
but the world thinks I'm cool, so I'm good with that.
So exactly right. So like intuitively, have you kind of always just like, or is it you're studying to learn this sort of stuff? Like back in the day before you're married, like are you pulling a ton of women because of how, you're a body language expert and like like you know what I mean? Like have you just always had it?
Um, When it came to the women, it was something that I mean, I used to try my luck, and I think back then it was more of a numbers game, and it was something that
You're taking up shots, and
yeah, I did quite well because I kind of kept asking. But over the years, there was things that I did in my training which kind of really helped me. So, in regards to the working in intelligence, we learned a lot about body language. We learned a lot about influence, and the training from that gave me a massive advantage then in the world when I could go out and use what I learned in body language and in influence to be able to then kind of get the women in my life, or I won't call them victims, but the long string the long string of previous lovers.
that's great. And so, like, what are some broad strokes in terms of that, of in body language that we should kind of like be watching for?
Best thing I can say is um look for change. Look for anything. So we've got this thing. What we do, we call it's called establishing the baseline, and that is just looking for what's normal for somebody. You know how they normally act, how they normally speak, how they normally sit, and understand that that baseline will change. So how somebody normally acts in front of their parents is going to be how different to how they normally act drinking with the lads down the bar, which is going to be different to how they normally act in the office at work or whatever the case may be. So you're going to have several different layers of baseline. That baseline will deviate depending on location and circumstance. But when you know what's normal, it then is a lot easier for you to be able to identify something that's abnormal. And
Mm,
that's when things stand out and you go, hang on. One of the instances for me, what got me interested in this in the first place was meeting an asset in a foreign country, and we have a particular routine that we get to. First off, we have to find out that we've not been followed or compromised and do what's called an SDR, or a surveillance detection route. That then allows you to become completely surveillance free and confident. You can then go to the meeting. You get to the meeting and there's a protocol, and one of the very first things that you have to do is establish the next meeting, and that way if it gets cut short or you get compromised or there's a problem and you have to all evacuate or whatever, you've at least got the next one set up, you know when and where it's going to be. And the series of questions that follows are just a very standard kind of, are you in any danger? Do you think you were followed here? Is there any reason, blah, blah, blah. And you ask all these questions. And one of the questions is, has any other foreign intelligence agency asked you for information? And this is just, or should be, just one of the questions where they go, no, 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 and everything should just be no, 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 and you go, okay, brilliant, and you can get on then with your meeting. So it's very kind of, cursory usually. And on this one occasion, I'm at the hotel and I said, has this happened? No. Has that happened? No. I said, has this happened? He goes, certainly not. Oh, okay. And I registered it. I said, has this happened? He said, no. I said, has that happened? No. I thought, okay. Something was very different there. He folded his arms, he looked away, he raised his voice. Everything about him changed in that moment in answering that question. And
mm.
I thought, that's what really stood out to me. And I recognized enough body language to then go, okay, I need to revisit that. And it later turned out that he had actually been compromised by a foreign intelligence agency. He'd become a double agent and was feeding both us and them information. So we adjusted it and utilized it and leveraged it to our advantage and ended up feeding false information to the third party. So it come good in the end, but that was purely because of body language and what I learned from it. So
Yeah.
and my interest from there peaked. So that's what you're looking for, those changes. They're not always as obvious as that. Sometimes they can be a lot more subtle. But change, that's the biggest thing that you want to be keeping your eye on.
Yeah, yeah. I thought you were going to say you put the nipple clamps on and shocked him with electricity, the double agent kind of thing. So is it, so obviously it's harder, like it's not impossible though to like for you to read body language of somebody that you just met. Sure, you need to have a baseline, but like you can
Yeah.
still kind of do that, right?
Yeah, I mean, so there are universals, as it were, and I use that word very carefully because there is no one size fits all. So one of the biggest myths, for example, is folding your arms means you're being defensive. Well, it doesn't. It could mean anything. It could mean you're cold. It could mean you're comfortable folding your arms. It could mean, you're leaning on your desk and that's how you want to sit. It could mean you're being defensive, but you don't know unless it's that particular person and you check, what their baseline is. But at the same time, if you're sitting with somebody and they have got their arms folded and they're relaxed and you're having a chat, and then all of a sudden you ask them a question and everything is very different. So they've gone from folding their arms and you ask them a question, they go, oh, no, then all of a sudden you get this kind of, all right, there's a
Mm-hmm.
lot of fidgeting going on, there's a lot of discomfort. And I haven't seen it before, but I recognize it's out of place. So yeah, you can quickly get to grips with reading someone's body language, and generally, if they're open and relaxed, open posture, that's good enough. Even if their arms are folded, that's fine because it just shows they're relaxed. So if they look relaxed and they're chilled out, nothing to worry about. If they are very closed off, angling their body from you, shoulders rounding, kind of, and a lot of the times these kind of things they will speak for themselves. A lot of people are a lot better at body language than they think they are. If you watch a TV movie, or series or something with the volume off, 9 times out of 10, you've got a pretty much good idea of what's going on. You'll know that there's about to be a fight or there's about to be a row or they're about to kiss or whatever the case may be because, the body language. And they are actors and they are obviously paid to overemphasize this, but you'd see it in real life as well if you had a magic mute button for the world, which I
Yeah.
sometimes wish I did have.
No kidding, right? Funny, Gavin. It says former spy, but it feels like you could like today pick up and go again. Like, is it something that would be maybe down the line, or are you just done doing that stuff?
I could, but I wouldn't. I'm actually now working on something which is a first of its kind. I've teamed up with a guy from MI6, a couple of guys from CIA, a fella from Mossad, and a former KGB agent, and we are bringing intelligence officer training to the public. And what we're doing, we've taken out all the flash and the bang and all the stuff that they're not going to need in everyday life. And it's concentrating on the psychological training given to intelligence officers. And this will be able to give anybody anywhere, no matter what their abilities are, a massive advantage in anything they do in life. Whether it's buying a house, whether it's getting a promotion, whether it's finding a wife, whatever it is, it gives them a completely different strategical thinking system to be able to achieve whatever the hell they want. And
Yeah,
that's launching in October.
I was gonna say, when's that starting? So where's that through?
So I've set up a company called SpyQ, and there's a holding page where the website will be soon, which is literally spy-q.com, where you can register your interest. But the website should be done very, very soon. We're just going through the last bits of tweaking and sorting that out. But yeah, there's either that or you can contact me directly on LinkedIn. And if anybody wants any more information, I can kind of, pass that on to them from there. So, but yeah, this is a one of a kind, and we've taken the best of the best from around the world, all the best agencies, all the best training techniques and methods, and we've condensed it into this high ticket event, which will be in London in October.
That's wild. Wow, man. Uh,
I
what are you watching lately, by the way? Curious
don't
on
watch much TV.
you don't.
I don't. I try and avoid it as much as possible. It's not good for you.
Okay.
I watch YouTube with things like Dr. Andrew Huberman and people like that. Occasionally, Diary of a CEO, that kind of thing. I listen to the occasional podcast. But me, I'm more of a book person, as you can see, and occasionally audio books if I'm on a long journey or something like that. So um, I will on a rare occasion, if a box set comes out that I'm interested in, I might sit and binge watch it, and then that'll be me. I'll switch off and I won't put the telly on now for another kind of 3, 4, 5, 6 months. Or if there's a film that really catches my eye so much so that I say I have to see that, I'll watch it. But I'll watch it, and then that again telly's off then, and I don't usually watch terrestrial telly.
Oh wow, okay, that's
Very
wild.
rare.
And so, what are you reading lately then? And who's your favorite authors?
Favorite authors. I've got a mix when it comes to fiction and non-fiction. Um, so I should be on commission off James Clear the amount of times I plug his book, which is if anybody who hasn't read it, it's called Atomic Habits, and it is just probably one of the best non-fiction books I've read for I don't know how long. Aside from the one that I'm reading now, I've just come across it and if it ends as good as it started, I'll be quite happy. And it's called the Puppet Master's Bible, and it's not usually available in high street. I think the guy's got his own website, and you can only buy it through him.
Mm,
But it's a really interesting book, and it's surprising how much a lot of the manipulation techniques taught in that book parallel the ones taught in the world of intelligence. So it makes me wonder if he's got some kind of a background in the same industry as me, and he's using a pseudonym. I don't know, but very interesting, very good.
very well could be somebody that knows the gig and just like slipping in and writing something. Sounds like it. Where do you live, by the way?
At the minute, I'm living in England, in southwest of England. I've lived over in the States on a couple of occasions, and we are back in the UK for the moment, and we're looking at either in the next 2 or 3 years, either going to Spain or back to the US. So my wife's a green card holder, and things are a little bit unstable, shall we say,
Hmm.
for green card holders in the US at the moment. So
Yeah,
yeah,
it's an
so
interesting time, isn't it?
yeah, it is very. A lot of them are causing problems. So at the minute, she's better off just staying over here until things settle down a little bit. So,
Yeah,
yeah, but I'm still working on other projects as well at the same time. I've got other books that I'm writing and one or two other little bits and pieces. So keeps
nice.
keeps me busy.
Never ends, right? And so, are you a big sports person? Like you go watch football over there?
Not, yeah, not really. My brothers were always football fans, and kind of, I always found interested in. I was always the guy who wanted to go out into the woods and set campfires and kind of toast marshmallows and kind of do the more getting into. I'm never really a spectator guy. I want to get involved. I want to kind of whether it's shooting, whether it's kind of camping, whether it's hiking, that kind of thing, rock climbing, whatever. That's more my gig. I don't
Mhm.
want to sit and watch somebody else. I want to be
You
doing
want to be
doing
doing
something.
it?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
So, and my daughter's pretty much the same, which I'm grateful for. She's 12 years old, pre-teen stage at the minute, and she goes to the army cadets, and she gets very much stuck in as well with like the camping and the shooting and that side of it. And I'm grateful for it. I still wanted to be a little girl, but I also wanted to be a kick-ass little girl.
yeah, nothing wrong with that. And so,
Yeah.
what's the gun in the background? What's
Oh,
the?
that one. It's just a one over one shotgun. You can probably see a couple of grenades and a
Yeah,
claymore there as well, just about. So, um,
Lenny Moore just sitting.
yeah. That's over that particular bookshelf. Which all the books in that particular bookshelf are actually signed by the authors, personalised to me. So,
Oh, cool.
that's an important bookshelf. That's why the claymore's above it. There is a little bit of a warning.
Yeah, no doubt. Don't go near this one. It's a bad idea. Awesome.
Uh,
How about the music in your life, Gavin? What do you listen to? What do you like?
Now normally I'm a little bit of a kind of your usual classic American rock kind of thing, like Saint Elmo's Fire and kind of the usual kind of anything really from kind of from Queen to Whitesnake, and anything in between. I like that kind of rock genre. But having a preteen daughter also on the mix is like the likes of Taylor Swift and I've kind of been brainwashed into kind of singing along to her songs and finding myself singing to to chart music and that kind of thing. So,
Yeah,
but pretty eclectic mix when it comes to music. So,
yeah.
what about yourself?
I'm the same as you.
Yeah.
Like Queen sounds great. Whitesnake sounds good. I'm a metalhead too, though. I'll get into like Metallica and Pantera and heavier
Oh,
shit like that. But yeah, I'm all over the map, honestly. Like I'm a huge fan of Morgan Wallen, who's like a big country guy right now.
no,
And if
wow.
for people that know me, like I did 20 years of radio and rock radio, right? Like people are like, "What? You like Morgan Wallen?" Like, yeah, the guy's awesome. What are you talking about?
Yeah,
So
listen,
yeah,
I'm the same. I mean, I like I say, I've got such a weird mix. I mean, it doesn't matter whether it's Phil Collins or Blue October.
yeah,
Yeah, I enjoy it. Which is crazy, and I think music for a lot of people, it's such a massive part of eras of their life,
sure. And
and
the way that
because
it makes you feel and the
yeah,
emotions and the memories and shit that it brings up too, right? Like all that stuff's
exactly.
huge, man.
So as you grow, your taste in music also grows because it's something that the old school stuff will always bring back the good old memories of the good old days, but at the same time, you can still like the new stuff as well. So
Yeah. And what was the first concert that you went to? Do you remember as a kid?
not that I went to, but the one I didn't go to,
Oh no.
and it drove me absolutely crazy. I could have gone to see Freddie Mercury for free, and had backstage passes as well, right? And I
What?
didn't go. I was a teenager at the time, and I didn't go because I was meeting a girl who I'd really got a soft spot for, and she never showed up.
I was gonna say,
That was the worst part. I could not
this
forgive
isn't
her
your
for.
wife, bro. You really
No,
messed
no,
up. Like,
no way would she have been my wife after that. So yeah, I couldn't believe it. I was so gutted, and I just remember going all the way home thinking I missed Queen for somebody who didn't even bother showing up. I'm never making that mistake again. uh,
that's terrible. Holy
yeah,
shit, to miss that.
yeah,
It didn't even
biggest
happen.
regret. Oh yeah, and like I say, the backstage passes, the whole lot, and it was all sorted out by somebody else. Yeah, something I'll never get the chance to ever do again. Yeah, so, ugh,
Yeah, it is what
lucky,
it is. I once went
yeah.
went down to San Francisco and did an interview and stuff with Metallica,
Oh
and I
wow,
bought a brand new camera right before going there. And on the way, man, I'm like, I had Lars filming me playing his drum kit and like seeing
wow.
him twice at the Fillmore, like 1,000-seater kind of thing, like tons of pictures and great videos. And behind backstage, I had like the all access bullshit for the radio station and stuff.
Wow.
And on the way back on the plane, I accidentally hit a button and it was like, "Do you want to format this
Oh,
whatever and disc?" And I was like, "Yeah, I guess whatever, right?" And of course, it fucking deleted everything.
oh, goodness.
So yeah, we
Oh,
all have those. We all have those moments. So
yeah.
what time is it right there? It's like
Right
6,
now, yeah,
7.
6:30 in the evening. Yeah, so because you're over in Canada, right?
Canada, yeah, we're
Yeah.
10:30 in the morning here. Yeah. So what's the
Oh,
plan for the rest of your day then?
I'm gonna have a pretty chill out day today. I've had a lot going on over the last few days with setting up the training, and as you can imagine, this kind of training that we're delivering, we have to be so careful for anything that can and cannot be abused. More importantly, I don't want to be in breach of the Official Secrets Act. Because for
Oh,
me, that is like straight to prison if I go out there and start teaching things that I haven't had clearance to teach. So I've got to get everything approved and kind of make sure that there's not going to be any repercussions for not just myself but the other guys from the intelligence community as well.
there's
So
like 5 or 6 other guys, right?
yeah, and there are a few guys like kind of in the back, involved as well, who from intelligence agencies who are still active. So they have to be extra careful because obviously they're still working within the community.
Mm. So what is that going to be like? Just kind of modules sort of thing? Like you watch at your own leisure kind of? And then
So
what is
we're
it?
going to do it as a live event, and we are literally going to take it's going to be limited places, and the people in the room, when they get there, are going to go through, I suppose, a bit of an awakening, if you want to call it that, to show them what they're capable of, and to teach them, the new strategic thinking techniques of the intelligence community, how we get things done, why we get it done efficiently. We're going to pull back the curtain on the entire world of intelligence, and how, kind of we make the magic happen, as it were. So when they leave, they will literally be equipped to go out there, and kind of, just no matter what it is. And I can give you some examples if you'd like me to. One that I've given frequently, so I apologize to anybody who's listening and has heard this before. But there's the people kind of, and this is the inspiration for all this. People would ring me up and say, "I've got a problem," and I'd say, "How can I help?" And I'd fix it. And eventually, I got to the point. It was my wife who said, instead of teaching people, or instead of people ringing you up and you fixing the problems and charging them for fixing it, why don't you just teach them the way you think, so that they can fix these problems for themselves? Well, okay, good idea. And that was where it stemmed from. And one of the best ones ever, like I said, I have said this before, but I'll repeat it for the people who haven't heard it. A friend of mine called me up and he said, "Gav, I've got a problem." I said, "What's that?" He said, "I want a Ferrari, but I can't afford a Ferrari." I said, "Yeah, you're probably not the only one with that problem." I said, "But I can fix it for you. Let's make it happen." And we sat down together, and I said to him, "Right," I said, "the first thing," I said, "you're looking at it wrong. You're looking at you spending your money to buy a Ferrari." I said, "You're looking at it at the fact that you're the one who's going to have to pay for it, and you're the one who kind of is paying for the privilege of driving a Ferrari." I said, "Instead, you should be asking yourself, how do I get paid to drive a Ferrari?" And he's like, "Okay, that's interesting." I said, "That's how we're going to make it happen." So what we did is we looked into setting up a very small business where once a month, on a private stretch of land, he does a junior Ferrari driving experience. And I think it's either 10 to 16 year olds or 12 to 18 year olds or something along those lines, where they can pay £50 in GBP, and they can do a couple of laps in the Ferrari on this private land. And it gets around about 100 kids or thereabouts on a Friday. And obviously there's extra streams of revenue. There's the catering, there's the merchandise, there's the upsells if they want to do an extra few laps, there's the photography and the videos and all the other bits and pieces. But if we just go off the basic of £50 from each, kid, and 100 kids, is 5 grand a month. It's covered the repayments on his Ferrari, the tires, and the insurance. And of course, it allows him to have 29 days of the month driving around in a Ferrari. So
Right.
he sacrifices one day a month, and the other 29 days gets paid for driving around in a Ferrari. So that's how we did it. And of course, I mean, I think he's in coming up to year 4, so he's got about 6 months left now, and the Ferrari will have been paid off by, the kids, and he's got it. I had it to drive around him for 4 years, and ended up with a free Ferrari at the end of it all.
Work smarter, not harder.
Exactly.
I love
I
that.
do,
Okay.
yeah. I've done the same thing with so many different people, whether it's with them wanting a particular job, I mean, same story with the guy with the Bentley, but he just does airport runs. He's actually got a driver, a chauffeur that does it on his behalf, and the rest of the time, whenever he wants a chauffeur-driven Bentley, he just calls his driver and says, "Bring the car around, James." So, we've got, there's tons of different examples, and I've used it for friends buying houses, right up to friends having career changes, and helped create jobs that don't even exist, just so they can fill the gap.
I love it. Okay, what's the website again for SpyQ?
Spy-q.com, or you can look for Gavin Stone on LinkedIn, or if you Google Gavin Stone Linktree, I believe all the links to all the social medias, and the websites, I believe, are all on there. If they're not, I'll get them updated today.
Okay, and what's your social media at mention again? Is it just straight up Gavin Stone?
Yeah, I think Twitter, I believe he's got author Gavin. Um, the Facebook page is just Gavin Stone author. same as LinkedIn, and I believe that the Instagram account, which I don't use as much as I should, is Gavin Stone _1. So, but again, if you just type in Gavin Stone Linktree
Fun.
into Google, I think it's all there on the Linktree page.
My arms are crossed, but it's not because I'm, uncomfortable. It's because I'm comfortable. Gavin, great to talk to you, buddy. I'm going to wrap it up here and get flying, but we'll tag you when we're chucking this stuff around.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. All the
Great to
best.
talk to you, buddy. Have a great day.
You too, buddy.